Hello, 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 and welcome to our class tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about saying yes to you and what that means. The decision to say yes can be made for different reasons. Based on what they are, you may feel good about saying yes, or you may not. Even though you've decided to respond that way, there are certain situations where you'll feel comfortable with it and others that may leave you kind of wanting. It's an interesting situation when we decide to say yes, because in some situations, it supports us and helps us to feel peaceful and at ease. And in others, it can be done, as many of us do, because it's an obligation, because others expect us to say yes. Tonight, we're going to explore different aspects of what yes actually means. Look at some of the situations in which women say yes and into the impact that doing so can have on you and on your well-being. When we make a conscious decision to say yes that comes from an empowered place of choice, it is a decision that is easier to live with and sometimes even the best thing you could possibly choose to do. So I'm going to launch right in and begin with the following question. What does the word yes mean to you? What do you think of when you hear the word yes?
Accepting.
Okay. Maritza?
Agreeing to something.
Mm-hmm. So the word yes is used to give a positive answer and to express agreement, as you just said, Maritza. And it shows a willingness to do something, whether it's for yourself or whether it's for someone else or whether it's for several other someone else's, right? It's a willingness to do something. And there are different messages that are associated with saying yes. So what are some of the messages that you think someone is sending when they say yes? Besides, I agree and I'm willing.
I want to help you with this.
I want to help you with this. Marissa?
I'm okay with this.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay with this. It sits well with me. I concur with that decision. I'm willing to do it. I will help you. I will help them, right? I'm receptive to that idea. I'm open to that idea. And that's not always the case. We're not always open. Sometimes we do it because we feel we would like to out of obligation, right? Those are some of the messages that saying yes kind of can convey. Now, sometimes we feel good about it and not so much in others. What are some of the reasons in the past that you have said yes? What are some of the reasons in the past that you have said yes?
To do something that I want to do.
Go either way. Why don't you just explain, give an example of a particular situation and say, in this situation, when I wanted to do something.
Simple example, family gathering. Will you make this dish? Yes, absolutely. Oh, and I'll make that too. And I'll make that. Absolutely. And just keep saying yes to all of the things on the menu that you're going to make.
So it's easier to say yes for in simple situations, right?
Yeah.
Will you Will you make that casserole that we love, that you make every Thanksgiving? Oh, yes, I'll make that. Not so easy to do that in complicated situations, right? Okay, so if you really want to, that's one reason. What are some of the reasons we say yes when it has to do with, what are some of the reasons we say yes when it has to do with other people? Maritza?
Either one, because we feel bad saying no, or two, because we feel a sense of obligation, maybe, to say yes.
Mhm. Two very good reasons. And often the two of them are together, right? We feel bad saying no. And we feel like, well, people are expecting it or they need my help. How many people had that? How many of you have had that in your head when someone asked you and you were kind of mulling it over as to whether or not you would say yes? How many people had that in their head? Yeah. So they're expecting this of me. They're expecting this. And so there's pressure, right? Sometimes there's pressure from the outside, from what other people, how other people are acting about it. And sometimes it's our own pressure. And sometimes it's a combination of both. They're pressuring us and then we feel pressure. And then it's like, wait a minute, what am I going to do here? So that's another reason. What about this one? I think this is probably one you've encountered at some point. Because it's the right thing to do. Someone ever said that to you? Well, you should do that because it's the right thing to do. Now, it may really be the right thing to do, right? But sometimes people use that as a tool to get you to do what they want. Well, you should do that because it's the right thing to do. It would make him so happy. It would make her so happy, right? It's tinged with a little bit of manipulation, isn't it, when someone does that? We always, I know, Liz, you can relate to this, but we always do it that way. Just cooperate with us and just agree because it's the right thing to do because we want it that way. It's the right thing to do. You're muted. If you want to talk, you got to unmute.
Yeah, I want to add to that. In my experience, it's with my family. That's how it's supposed to be. And sometimes it's just easier to say yes than fight it. Even when you don't want to say yes, or you're trying to stand up to them and say no, but it's just easier to concede and say yes and do what's expected of you.
So when you have it in your mind or someone else has this in mind and they say, well, that's how it's supposed to be. That's, laying the guilt on, you're supposed to do it that way. Then it makes you feel like, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to make waves. I don't want to shake things up. Because then how are the other people in the situation going to respond to me? So it's kind of like sometimes what happens is we substitute one discomfort for another. We swallow something people want us to do and we agree to something we really don't want to do because we don't want to, because we're concerned. We are anticipating that there may be something unpleasant, right? And so when we anticipate something unpleasant and we want to avoid that anticipated thing, so we say, okay, I'll do it. Can you relate to that at all? Yeah, okay. So what about this one? Here's another one. I'm a dependable person. I'm reliable. Kathy's smiling. People can depend on me. It's who I am. I come through. What happens when you see yourself that way and then you bump into a situation where there's something inside of you that says, I don't think I want to do this. But then there's this little voice in your head. I'm the one they can count on. I come through. How does that affect you?
It's a burden. I mean, I have felt that way my whole life, and I'll be the first to volunteer just because, and I don't even want to volunteer. I'll say to myself, I don't want to do this, but I am dependable. I am, so-and-so is too busy. I can fit it in. I make all these excuses how I should do it, even though I don't want to do it.
I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Has that gotten better over time?
It has. It definitely has.
What's that been like to notice the difference as you've learned to say no and you really, really don't want to say yes?
It's freeing. I'm seeing me. I'm recognizing me. I'm saying, as you said, yes to me. I'm acknowledging that I do have a say in what I do and what I feel, and I don't have to give all that away. I can keep that for myself and enjoy that for myself.
And how does that feel?
It's amazing. It's life-changing.
I have a choice, and it's my choice, not anybody else's. And if it doesn't feel right to me, and clearly if it's not a life and death emergency where all bets are off, right? I can say no and recognize that I just honored myself, and I feel freed of the burden of feeling like I have to be kind of dragged around with that situation. And every time it comes up, it's like, oh, Kathy, you're going to take care of that, right? Yeah. Takes a lot of pressure off.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure it reduces stress too.
Yeah.
So that's all very good, right? All very good. Okay. So women who say yes are often seen as cooperative, receptive, reliable, helpful, agreeable, and collaborative. Those are all good things to do and all good things to be, all good ways to be within reason and based on what feels right to you. And I think that's the key in all of this. It's important to recognize that you can be a reliable, helpful, agreeable, collaborative, wonderful person, but not have to say yes to everything. Not have to, like take on someone else's problem or try to help solve a situation just because you think you're the best person for the job. And you might be, you know what, but it could be handled by someone else and done well enough without your having to do it. And that frees up time for what? What does that free up time for? For you, right? Okay, so here are some of the other reasons that women say yes. And there's the dilemma, there's the difference between feeling I want to and I have to. A choice versus an obligation. And obligation doesn't mean that you're going to say no, but a choice versus an obligation, meaning I don't actually have to do it when it's an obligation, is something I've sometimes said I want to. I make a conscious decision, right? Also, I don't want to disappoint others. I don't want to disappoint others. And as we said before, they're expecting that of me. And the other thing that we said before was I want to avoid conflict. Now, what's the problem with not saying no when you really want to say no in a situation because you want to avoid conflict? But what's the problem with not saying no when you really want to say no? What happens? What happens to you? How do you feel? Kathy. Not Kathy, I'm sorry, Liz.
You feel a lot of I would feel a lot of resentment to the situation, or to the person that I'm doing something for.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah. And it would make me not want to do it again, even more than I didn't want to do it the first time.
So it increases resentment. You're very cute. It increases resentment and it increases resistance. Forget it. Don't even come back to me. No way. I'm not doing that. So absolutely. Now, sometimes what happens is sometimes we say yes and it becomes, this is kind of a description of what you just said, Liz. Sometimes when you say yes, it becomes a negative experience because there are certain beliefs underneath that impact on what your decision is. And I want to ask you to fill in the blank. And the blank is going to be the belief, okay? The belief that causes you to say yes when you want to say no. I have to say yes. I feel like I have to say yes to this because, Liz.
I deal with this all the time in my professional life and my personal life. I have to say yes because I know I'm going to get it done right the first time, instead of saying no and somebody else doing it and it's not done right, or it's not done the way that I would have done it. And then that causes frustration. So it's just easier for me to do it myself and say yes to it, because then I know it'll get done and it'll be done. Whatever the task is, it'll be done to my liking and my standards.
So it'll be done to your liking and your standards, and you know you'll get it done the first time because you'll do it right. When does that become a problem for you?
All the time.
Ah, okay.
Which I've recognized in the last couple of years, all the time.
Okay. Okay. Kathy's cracking up. We're all laughing. I think that in general that most women can relate to that on some level. When we're good at something, it's like, well, I'll do it because I'm good at it, or especially if you're cooking for a gathering and there's something you really like to cook. It's like, well, I'll do that because then I can eat my own food, right? Maritza's laughing. Can you relate to that, Maritza? Yes.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
absolutely.
Uh-huh. What's that dish that you want to make when you go somewhere instead of having someone else make it?
I would probably say baked ziti. That's like my signature.
Ah, well, there are times when it makes a lot of sense, right? It makes the meal better when you bring your own food and you love your food, right? I remember many years ago, name shall not be mentioned, but I remember many years ago there was an annual Thanksgiving gathering, and the people that I would go to with friends didn't believe in cooking really, and would go out and go to this store and buy the same thing every year and say, it's wonderful. We're having a turkey pastrami roast. It was like totally processed food. And it was like this piece of whatever, I don't know what it was. And that's what they were having. And I did not want to go every year because of the food. It was such an issue because I was like, that's not Thanksgiving. That's not turkey. It's fake food. It's, and I was so resistant. And I used to say something about bringing my own food. And some of the people that I knew were like, oh, you don't want to make waves. You know what? Come on, I'm going to sit there and be miserable and eat that. And, and at some point, I think I brought something and they were happy. They were happy with it. And then after a while, I started bringing, but It was just like, oh, no, 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 it wasn't turkey pastrami. They said, oh, we're getting turkey tenderloin. And I thought, ah. Because it was very, very, very terrible. It tasted awful, and it was very salty, and it wasn't real food. So yeah. So there are times when you do want to make that choice, and it's a conscious choice. Sometimes we say, I'm going to do that, and we feel good about it. Right now, what I heard you say, Liz, which was, I think, a very an honest admission, is that can get in your way when you sometimes feel like I can do it better. I can do it better. What kind of challenges has that posed for you?
It's posed some trust issues because by me not trusting others to do something, because I'll just do it better and I'll do it right the first time, it creates, communication problems and trust issues. By just doing everything myself and not asking for help or not allowing others to help me, I put a lot on my plate. And my husband tells me that I take everything as a personal challenge to do it myself. When I take the garbage out and I've got boxes and bags, he's like, do you want help? And I'm like, I love you. No, thank you. He's like, it's not a challenge. I can help. And we laugh about it, but that's just one thing that I do every day. And I don't ask for help. And I'm like, I got it. I'll do it myself. Not because I can't trust him, not because he can't take the garbage out. It's just like, I'm in the process. I'm doing it. I got it. And it's just easier for me to say, no, I got it, than say, okay, get up, put your shoes on, let's go. The two of us will go to the garbage room.
What would happen if you gave him notice and you say, hey, listen, we're going to take out the garbage and I want to take it out by like 10. Would you help me? Can you be ready so that we can go out and just, you take the boxes, I'll take the bags. What would happen?
Oh, it goes quick.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem, right?
It's definitely not a problem. It's me in my own head because I get myself so focused and I don't allow people to help me. And I do this with everything. And it got really bad in my professional life because I was taking on so many projects and I'm trying really hard to manage that by not taking on too many things. But then I don't like it when people don't follow through on the timeline when I could have just done it myself. And this is where we talk about my control issues.
Well, I would imagine with what you just described, in all seriousness, it must have been very hard for you to be in a leadership position where you had to ask other people to help, or where you could have asked other people to help, but you were in a situation where the people above you weren't helping you, so you really didn't know what to do. And so sometimes maybe you would have wanted to ask for help, and maybe you didn't really know what to ask for help with because you didn't know what to do yourself sometimes because you didn't get help. So that must have been really hard. And that must have been especially hard for you, considering you said, I know I'm going to get it done right the first time. It must have made you feel very uncomfortable, to say the least, to be in a situation where you couldn't see yourself, where it wasn't possible, not that you didn't have the ability, but it wasn't possible for you to do it in a way that you felt was to your standard because you really didn't know what was expected of you.
Right.
Which had to affect how you felt about yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely affected my feelings of confidence, of feeling capable. And at the time I had an assistant, but I didn't like how she did things. So I would just do it myself. And I would end up doing all of her work and my work. And I'd work ridiculous hours. So it's in all areas of my life.
You know what they say, when you need to get something done, ask a busy person. There you are.
And I grew up hearing my mom say, you want something done right, do it yourself.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Were you criticized for not doing things right?
I would see it happening around, and I would be criticized too, but I would definitely see it happen to my sisters, more so my oldest sister.
So you didn't want it to happen to you. And that's probably part of the reason why you took so much on. Don't worry, I'll do it. It's fine. I'll do it.
And then you become the go-to person.
Kathy, are you nodding because you're hearing what she's saying and acknowledging what she's saying? Or are you nodding because you've been there yourself?
No, well, my husband's father used to say the same thing. If you want something done right, do it yourself. So he's always doing that. I can understand where all this is coming from. And I have a little bit of that in me as well.
Mhm. Does that have anything to do with where you were raised? Is that a Midwestern thing? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're all so quiet that you just, plod along doing your own thing. No one says yay or nay. And so if you just want to, and then you don't communicate. So if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. So, yeah.
Just like the Italian families, right, Liz? Very quiet. I'm kidding.
Mhm.
What is your family like, Maritza?
My family is, I would say my dad more so is very much like that. The type of person where he says, if you're gonna do something and you want it to be done right, do it yourself. If you're gonna do something, do it the right way or don't do it at all. If you're gonna do something, make sure it's perfection because that's a reflection of who you are.
Mm,
So I grew up listening to that my entire life. So I can definitely relate and understand. And that's why I've been nodding yes this whole time. My head hurts from nodding yes. Because my father is definitely like that. My mom, she's more laid back in that sense, but my father has always been the type of person to just, do it right, perfection, 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 do it yourself.
hmm How much pressure has that put on you?
Oh, so much, especially during college. I think that's where I've had conversations with you, Joan, about my anxiety, and I mentioned to you a few times that I think that that's where uh my anxiety really came to light was during my college years because I felt so much pressure uh to, get amazing grades and to figure out what I want to do with my life, and it just uh it brought me a lot of anxiety and stress for sure.
Probably made it hard to say no to a lot of things, even though you might have had a lot on your plate already.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, one of the reasons why I became a biology major uh, is because when I was younger, I happened to tell my father that I wanted to be a doctor when I was little, very little. And he took that and he ran with it for the rest of his life. So I always felt that pressure to, make him proud. And so that's really why when I got into college, I chose biology as my major. And luckily enough, I really liked it. I
Mm,
enjoyed it. I still do. I'm happy that I chose that route, but uh it was definitely my father's influence that,
mhm,
that pressure that I felt to not let him down.
mm. And sometimes when we make a decision because we don't want to let someone else down, while at some point we may say, well, yeah, that was an okay decision. If we're doing it for someone else to not let them down, it feels very differently than if we just do it for ourselves, right? And sometimes there can be some um, real ambivalence about the decision because it can get and I don't know if this applies to you, Maritza, but I'm just saying in general, it gets confusing. Like, did I make that decision because I wanted to please that person, or did I make that decision because it's what I wanted? To really figure that out can be a little bit tricky, you know. Well, I'm glad you ended up liking biology. I think that's good. Okay, so why would you say women are more likely to say yes when something a problem needs to be solved, or when someone asks for help. This is not a trick question. You all know the answers.
I think women care about what other people think more often than men do.
So it's the perception, how you're perceived, is a very big part of it. How we are perceived as women is a very big part of it.
I think women have a natural desire to take care of and nurture. Most women have a natural desire to take care of and nurture others. So saying yes means doing for others and taking care of others.
True. Natural affinity for that kind of thing is much more, a female trait than a male trait. And as you said, not every female does that. And maybe some that might be that way, because you had a very knowing look on your face a couple seconds ago.
There's always an aunt that doesn't that's not nurturing.
Oh, that aunt, right? That one. Okay. So women have that tendency, certainly, to be nurturing. That makes a lot of sense. And when we combine it together with some of the other factors we talked about before, which include, hang on a second, wanting to be seen as reliable, knowing it's the right thing to do, so I should do it, right? And also, wanting to avoid conflict, not wanting to make waves, those are all reasons that combine together to make it more likely that women are going to say yes. Now, the challenge then is, if women are more likely to say yes in those situations, what happens when, as we were talking about before, you get caught in between, this is what other people think, this is the way this is the way I view myself. I'm responsible, I'm hardworking, people can count on me, and all that stuff. And I don't really want to. Like, how do you figure that out? How do you balance that out and come up with a decision? It's not easy, right? Now, when you're saying yes to others, that's what we're talking about. Now we're going to shift into the other part, which is saying yes to yourself. What does saying yes to yourself mean? What does that mean? Beyond the obvious, which means saying yes to yourself.
I think it means taking into account how I feel and what I want. And what feels comfortable to me.
So people of older generations would say, what are you talking about? Right? Think back. Think about your dad, Kathy, right? Think about my mom. What are you talking about? It's not about how you feel. It's not what you want. It's not comfort level. You just do it. You got to do it. And so when you're in a situation where the previous generation has a very different take on, how to approach a situation where someone asks for your help, or when there's a need for help, it makes it hard for you to honor yourself and make a decision based on what feels right, because they never did, because they never learned how to. It's like, you got to do it and you do it. That's it. What a difference it is, though, that when you recognize that you have a choice, that you can choose to say to yourself, that person thinks that's an emergency. Doesn't look like an emergency to me. They really, really, really want me to do that. Now, do I? Will that work for me? To be able to have that process to give yourself permission to think about what is being asked of you, or the situation in which someone else expects you to be part of it, to figure out whether or not that's going to be what you do. Now, a word just popped into my mind, which I think is one of the other dilemmas that people sometimes face, which is, well, you're not doing that. Well, that's kind of selfish. That's selfish. How could you not do that? Dispute me, please, because I don't agree with that, but dispute that statement. Is it selfish to decide that something is not going to work for you and that it's not right for you to be in a situation or to help someone else? Is that selfish? Or is it self-protective?
I think once you can like you said, give yourself permission to consider the situation first, it becomes self-protective. Because if that situation is not going to work for you, why are you going to put yourself in it? And I face this with my family, where it's like, well, you don't have kids, so you should come to Long Island and you should help grandma do this, that, and the other thing. We can't do it. We have kids. We have all this other stuff going on. And I would constantly be like, okay. And I live in Westchester, so it's a trek, and I don't have a car. So it was a trek for me to go down to Long Island, train, get out there, spend the weekend. And my whole weekend would just be doing all of this work for my grandmother, which I have no problem doing for her. But it was the pressure of, you all live in this house and you can't drop what you're doing to help our 90-year-old grandma. I have to travel 4 hours round trip to do all of this work because I don't have kids. And then once I finally said, no, when I'm there, if I can, I will absolutely help. It's not fair to me for me to have to drop all of the things that I need to do for myself. I have a life too, but it took me like 5 years to actually get to that point with them, to say, no, that's not fair to me. And I was told that I'm selfish. I'm okay with it now, but it took me like 5 years to get to that point to say, like, that's not fair to me. Why do you think it's fair? And yeah, it feels good now.
There were I'm sure there were many reasons why you continued to do it even though you didn't want to. What were some of the reasons that you kept doing it even though you didn't want to?
There was that feeling of obligation, because I was the go-to person who could do the things that the housework that my grandmother needed to do, or the planting, that she's a gardener, so she needed help gardening. I could do these things. I like doing these things. So I was the go-to person. So I always felt the obligation to do it. There was a level of enjoyment to do these things for her, because I want to do for her. I want to take care of her and help.
Mhm.
I do have that connection with her. Yeah, that's about it.
How many times did they tell you that you do things really well?
All the time.
Which is part of the reason why probably you figured, well, hey, I'm the best for the job, so I might as well be me.
And it always seems like the path of the least resistance, because I wouldn't get into fights with her about things, about throwing out, all of the stuff that she's accumulated. Her and my grandmother and my mom would fight tooth and nail about the amount of stuff that my grandmother would accumulate. She'll save water bottles. For what? Empty water bottles. But my grandmother's a child of the Depression. She saved things. And my mom would fight with her about throwing things out, or my sisters would if they helped, it was very minimal and like dismissive. So I'm not like that. It's the path of least resistance. I'm not like any of that. So I'll just do it, and I'll keep my grandmother happy, and it'll make her happy, and I'll be helping.
What made you change your mind and decide to say, I'm not doing that all the time?
When I started my own life and my own family. I got married. My husband and I moved to Westchester. We started our own life, and I still feel that pull in between doing things for my family on Long Island, being at home. So the point of going, I can't do this anymore, was finally saying, I have an obligation to myself and my husband and this life that we're building here. I have to give that time. I have to nurture that. I did my part now, and everyone's got to understand that I don't live there, and I'm not just a free bird where I could drop everything and go out to Long Island and do all the stuff that everyone needs to get done.
Which would be hard to do if you had a car, let alone without a car.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it was exhausting. Just the commute alone.
I'm sure. Maritza, is there any particular situation that you have dealt with where it was hard for you to say no when you felt like you really wanted to?
Mm-hmm. I would say at work, many times, where my manager has asked me, or even a coworker has asked me, "Hey, can you cover this shift?" And then I really don't want to because it's supposed to be my day off and I may have plans. But if I say no, then what happens if later on the line, I need a shift covered? So it's like that sense of like, okay, well, I have to give to receive. If I need a favor one day, if I say no to this favor, will they say no to me when I really need it? Or with my manager, will he think I'm a lousy worker if I decline to work this day? So I would say that definitely at work is where I feel that the most.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm working through it. It's a process. I'm practicing it. And even just today, actually, my manager, as I was leaving work, I'm supposed to be off tomorrow. Tomorrow's my day off, and Leo, my boyfriend, and I, we made plans for tomorrow. So as I was leaving, my manager says, "Hey, Maritza, quick question. I really need your help. Do you think that you can come in tomorrow, and then I'll give you off another day?" And I felt so uncomfortable. I hate that feeling of just uncomfort, but I pulled through and I was honest. I said, I can't. I'm sorry. I already made plans with my boyfriend, and if I could, I would, but this time around, I can't. I'm sorry, but no."
Mhm.
He understood, but there's definitely a level of uncomfort that I feel when saying no, and I feel like, oh man, maybe I should, because as we said, maybe it's the right thing to do.
Mhm. That's particularly challenging when you're talking about work and you're talking about a supervisor. It's a little bit presumptuous, though, of a supervisor to ask you as you're walking out the door, "Would you come in tomorrow on your day off?"
Hmm.
How would that go over with you, Ayana?
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late.
It's good to see you.
I think in the past I probably would have, kind of felt like how Maritza was feeling, just based off of what I've heard when I just came in, like that pressure of like needing to, I guess, do your job and I guess like make these folks proud or whatever. But I don't know, after being burnt out so many times and getting tired of being burnt out, now I'm just like, no, I have something to do. And I have a child as an excuse too. And usually if you just say, yeah, I have a kid, they kind of back off. But if you don't have a kid, no, I have something important to take care of, AKA myself. But they don't need to know all that.
I like that. I have something important to take care of, AKA myself. I love that. That's great. We were talking about what it means to say yes, why women tend to be more likely to say yes, and what some of the things are, some of the reasons that it's hard to not say yes to other people. And we were just talking about, what does it mean to say yes to yourself? So that's kind of where we're at right now. Anything you have to share about a situation that you have dealt with where you've wanted to say no to something someone was asking you and it was hard for you and how you dealt with it?
Me personally,
Mm,
I I find saying no to family to be a really hard thing to do. But not lately for me. I'm trying to think of something in the past, but what I've done is understood what I needed and the importance of setting boundaries, even though it may make someone else feel uncomfortable. And it's like I'm learning how to do that more and more by, like, if someone approaches me with something and they're like, hey, can you do this on this day? I'm like, let me consider it. I have to look at my schedule and then I will get back to you. And usually it's a no, but that's like a polite way of saying probably not. But I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything right now. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I'm just so.
That's a general example of how you handle something where you have it's a two-step process of saying no. You
Yeah.
sort of stall giving an answer by saying, I'll have to get back to you. I'll have to check my book and see, when you're completely clear that your desire is to say no. But rather than just saying no, you put some space between the question and your answer, which gives you a bit of an advantage, because if someone is pushing for you to give them an answer right away, you've slowed them down.
Yeah.
So
Well, I have an example. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My dad wanted me to come over last week to help with his Medicare application, and I really didn't feel like going. It was a really rough week for me, and I could say no, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I agreed to go, and I went on I think it was Friday before the snowstorm, and I went there. I did it. I helped him. It was nice, but I still felt like I should have just told him maybe the next week. But I just think that it's so hard for females to say no because men dominate like everything in the beginning when women were trying to establish themselves and in society and in jobs, and it's like this thing that's kind of just kept on going for so long, and now we're at that point where it's like, no, we don't have to prove ourselves to people. Why are we doing this? Why are we like burning ourselves out so much just to prove that we are more capable than like our male counterparts to do these jobs? And I think that's kind of where the history is, and also family and culture and things like that. And then you just get to the point where you're just like, yeah, enough. I'm more important, which is not easy sometimes. I feel like as like me personally, I'm always putting everyone else ahead of me, and I've done it for so long that I didn't realize how much I was hurting myself and saying yes to everything and feeling so burnt out and so tired and just so irritated and angry at people that I just had to take a step back and say, okay, no, something's not right here. And it took a lot of therapy to get to this point.
And it is challenging when you have a little one because you're at her beck and call, because if she needs something, then you need to be there.
Yeah, it is. And then, I try to think about it in terms of like, she helps me stay present. And when I'm playing like Marble Run with her, when we're doing like magna tiles, it's like an opportunity for me to just be present with her in that moment, and nothing else really matters. I'm just trying to like kind of shift how I think about that. Like, yeah, when I'm spending time with her, I could be doing something maybe for myself, a little bit of self-care, but kind of staying present sometimes is a good form of self-care, and I get to connect with her. So it's like all about perception, I think,
And she sounds like she's an amazing little kid to hang out with.
She is so fun. She is so fun. I have so many stories. I won't go there, but she's just,
we will
she's
we
so
will
fun.
definitely want to hear some of those at some point. That would be lovely. I want to go to what you said
Sure.
about women and how hard we've had to prove ourselves, right? One of the things that you mentioned, Liz, this is months ago when you and I sat down and I interviewed you about the group. You talked about having imposter syndrome. And so many women say that they feel like, they're just faking it and they really don't know they don't really have what it takes. And I just wanted to mention, I may have mentioned it in a group before, but I think it's important because it relates to the part about saying yes for women. And then imposter syndrome, I didn't actually do the research on it, but I saw it referred to recently in an article, I believe it was. Imposter syndrome was a concept that was born in the 70s at a time when they did some type of research about this. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to go back and check it and then come back with the full picture of it. Somebody was doing research about women and about how they felt, and somehow there was this group of women that was talking about feeling like they were imposters and they really weren't able to kind of do the work and do the job and such. And what I want to point out to you, which is really very important, is that in the 60s and the 70s there was a big shift in women's consciousness and in society. And it was at that time that women were first starting to speak up and speak out and express themselves and stand up for the right to have their opinion and for a right to be women, which was very different than men, right? Because in a male-dominated society, women were second to the men, and it was more like, well, this is how you do things in business. You do it like the men do it, kinds of thing. So at that point in time, women really did not have their feet on the ground. They weren't grounded in who they were because they didn't figure it out yet. They hadn't figured it out yet. And so when I think back on that time, on the fact that this whole concept of imposter syndrome was born from a time when women really didn't know who they were, no wonder they felt like imposters. Not that they were imposters, but what model did they have to go by to compare themselves to? There was no model really at that point. It was just starting to take shape a little bit. And then as women got more active and involved in working and in the business world, women decided what they needed to do was model themselves after men. The men are working 60 hours a week. I'll do the same, and I'll show them I can be as strong and tough and capable as a man by knocking myself out in that way and burning myself out, which is clearly not the answer. And so part of the reason, I think, truthfully, besides the nurturing nature that so many women have, part of the reason why I think women have had a tendency to say yes to things more is because they felt they had to prove themselves more than men, because they were living in a man's world where they had to compete with men and felt that like they had to prove themselves. And that's been passed down over the generations. And also that lovely, irritating stereotype of how women are they're so pleasant and so cooperative. And when you need help, all you have to do is call on a good woman. She'll do it, you know? There was a commercial, Kathy, I know you'll remember this. Liz, I don't think you will. And you guys, definitely not. There was a commercial for, what the heck was that for? It was I think back and it gets me really mad. Oh, it was, I'm going to sing it to you. She said, the woman is, I don't know, I think she's holding like a briefcase. And she says, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and I'll never let you forget you're a man, 'cause I'm a woman. Oh, it was Anjali perfume. That's what it was for. How obnoxious is that, right? The perfect model of what I just said, right? I'm going to bring home the bacon. I'm going to go to work and I'm going to bring home money just the way you are. And I'm going to cook for you, right? And I'm never going to let you forget you're a man. You know what that means, right? You know, I'm going to make you happy when we have our private time. You'll be very happy. I will do everything, right? And by the way, with this nice perfume, Anjali, right? So many sexist commercials at that time. So many. And that's why was that happening then? Why was that commercial on TV? Liz, why?
I think, like Ayanna said, women were entering the workforce and they were trying to prove that they could work and bring home money and yet still be the homemaker that's expected of them. I just saw something that said the 40-hour work week was invented for people who only went to work, not for the people who went to work and came home and took care of the house. Something to that effect. And it was like, don't kill yourself trying to work 40 hours a week, because the work that you do around the house is also work. And you're trying to do both, you're trying to prove yourself in both worlds, or, take care of both worlds. That was eye-opening. How women are trying to how women entered the workforce. And I think that women still brought in that need to take care of and that need to say yes and prove ourselves. But then where was the balance of taking care of themselves, taking care of their families? Where are the expectations of others? Teamwork. Where's the teamwork? If everybody's going to go to work and have a family, where's the teamwork?
And so part of what happened was women felt in order to prove they were good enough, which is the source, it is the basis for imposter syndrome. I don't think I'm good enough, right? In order to prove they were good enough, they thought they had to do twice as much or 1.5 times as much. That's a formula for burnout, right? Most people I know had mothers who did that. Most people I know. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so what that does to women is it makes us believe, and fortunately it's changing, so it's been changing, so thank goodness for that, but it makes us believe that we are never good enough unless we're doing much more than other people. What's that a formula for? Never feeling adequate enough, never feeling that you're doing what's right, and always feeling like you have to work harder and harder and harder and take on the next thing. And it's like a challenge. And unfortunately, what happens with some people, and I know that, some of you have kind of expressed this, is that it's an external message that people have gotten from society, right? And from family expectations and so forth. And what happens is we take it on as our own. We believe somehow that we're not enough because other people have given us the impression that we're not. So after we hear it long enough, we feel like, wait a minute, I really need to do more. What would happen if you didn't have to do more? What would happen if you just did as much as you needed to based on how you felt? And we're still kind and still thoughtful and still generous with people and still helpful. Just didn't give your whole self away. What would happen? Would that be a good thing?
Yeah, you could breathe. You could catch your breath. You could find yourself again, because that working like that, you lose yourself. You don't even know who you are anymore. And it would be a time for self-discovery, and it would be a lot of burden would be lifted off your shoulders. Feel really great.
It would feel really great. You'd have to deal with some flack, but overall it would feel really great. So to look at, yeah, and I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that I feel like it would bring more equilibrium to us internally, like on the inside, and then that would impact how we respond and how our outside or external environment will be. And then it's like, yeah, people aren't going to be happy with it, but you're getting your work done while still being efficient and having some time for yourself, you know, but rather than showing up to work with like in a bad mood or something, foggy brain because you're burned out and not being able to perform anyway.
Mm-hmm. And when you say yes when you don't want to, when you take on too much, besides being foggy brained and exhausted, remember what we said before, there's resentment, which then builds resistance. So there's the discomfort of the resentment and the resistance you feel by choosing to do something you really don't want to do, versus that discomfort versus the discomfort of having to deal with someone's pushback. They don't like it. Which one would you choose? And you do have a choice. The good news is the second choice is one which allows you to continue to feed and nourish yourself and stand for what you believe in a nice way, but setting limits with people about what you can do and what you can't do can cause them to be disappointed. But you know what? If it's not a life-threatening thing, they'll get used to it. They may not like it. Okay. Everybody has stuff they don't like. They'll get used to it. When someone thinks you're going to come through for them all the time and there's no sense that, there's such a thing as a no, it's like automatic, right? But when you say, nope, sorry, I'm not going to be able to do it tonight. That's not going to work for me. And you stand firm for what it is that you're saying, you're teaching them how to treat you. You're teaching them what to expect. And with some people, I'm not going to necessarily say everybody, but sometimes with guys, they lean on their women too much and think that, okay, I'll leave the dishes in the sink. I know she's going to do it. Ayana's laughing. I know she'll do it, right? And then if you do, guess what? He's right. And you might want to, and that's fine, but the next time what happens, he's going to leave the dishes in the sink again. Your choice, what you want to do. I would like to ask you, because we have like 20 minutes left, would you like to do a breakout for 10 minutes and just chat about where things are for you and what would help you to be able to say yes more to yourself? Liz is doing a dance here.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be in a great breakout room, whatever.
What would you like to do? I'm up for either. I'm open for either. You want to continue talking? Do you want to do a breakout?
I think
I like
we're
the open dialogue.
yeah, we're in a
Open
small
dialogue?
enough group that I it feels intimate enough.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm glad you spoke up. I appreciate everyone saying how they felt. I like that. I encourage that. Absolutely. Some people find it inconvenient. Too bad. Not here. Here is a place where you could speak up. You could say what you want to say and you could express yourself. That's why we're here. Oops, I just dropped my phone. I remember when I was in college, I was taking a course and I remember that we were having some difficulty because the teacher was really a pain in the neck. He was hard to understand. He was from Israel and he had a very thick accent. It's actually my Hebrew class. First semester at Brooklyn College, I didn't understand him. So I said something. He didn't like it. Kept asking him questions. And the funny thing was, the more I asked him, the more confused I got, because I'd ask him a question and he would answer me in a very thick Israeli accent. And I had no idea what he said. So I asked again and I asked again. He didn't like it and he gave me a hard time and I ignored it. I mean, I didn't ignore it. I didn't like it, but I was young enough that I really didn't care. I never really got the answers. But anyway, after class, people would come over to me and they would say to me, I'm so glad you asked that question. I was thinking that also. And I said, well, why didn't you ask? I don't want to seem foolish. Okay, well, when you go to take your test and you really don't know what you're doing, that's when you're going to really seem foolish, you know? So, and I didn't care. I was the one who spoke up. That was, I think actually that particular class was my first foray into social work.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because I'll let you in on a secret, because he didn't teach us very well. And we kept asking him to explain things and he didn't answer. He got annoyed. And then he gave us a test and everybody got in the 50s and the 60s, the whole class. And all of a sudden everybody was mad. They were really angry. Like, what did he do? I can't understand. And he took ridiculous amounts of points off for things that were like very small mistakes. So they all came to me and they said to me, well, what are we going to do? So I said, what do you want to do? Well, we should report him to the department, the head of the department. I said, okay, I'll draft up, a petition and you'll sign it. Okay. We sent it out and the department chair looked at it and they removed him from the department. Why? Not because we were difficult, not because we were unreasonable, but because we made our point. We weren't going to just let this pass. People didn't want to fail the class. And what ended up happening was, turns out that there were problems. He had other difficulty with other students before. So they put him in another department. But I just said, it doesn't make sense to me. I've always been that way. I don't know. It's just the way I've been. So I like being that way, actually, not to be difficult, but if something doesn't make sense to me, just, is it inconvenient sometimes when you speak up and you speak your truth and when you say no to somebody and they'd rather that you say yes? Yeah. Oh, well, they'll have to learn to live with it. A lot easy for me to say that when it's not a situation where there's some there's a complex situation or, the nature of the relationships is more involved, right? But if you're going to be dealing with discomfort, you might as well be dealing with discomfort having chosen what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Maritza.
It's just something I want to share. I think I spoke to Liz about this when we had our last breakout group. that the way that I'm starting to look at things now, whenever I start to feel uncomfortable to say no, is I think to myself, would that person have a difficult time saying no to me? Like, would that person uh care if they were to make me feel uncomfortable? And if the answer is no, then it makes it so much easier to say no to that person. Like when I think about it that way, obviously, like you just said, relationships with everyone in your life, they're different, but I think it makes it much easier to analyze if, the shoe were on the other foot, would that person hesitate to say no or to set boundaries? And many times the answer is no. So that makes me feel a little bit lighter,
Mm.
therefore saying no as well.
That's a wonderful point. That's a wonderful point. And one of the things that that speaks to also is that when we are in a relationship with someone who, when we're in a jam or when we're having problems or difficulties, and we call upon them and they show up for us, those are the people we're going to want to show up for and say yes to because they've said yes to us. Because there's reciprocity there, because we can count on them. Whereas there may be very nice people, very good people in our lives that really don't kind of don't inconvenience themselves to help us out. And so if you see that and it can help you, Maritza, if it can help you to say, you know what, I feel a little less bad about saying no because they would say no to me, you know? You got to learn somehow and you've got to start somewhere, and that's a good place to start. Liz, what is it like having learned? I love that face. For that face. What is it like having learned to set limits with your family compared to what it was like years ago? What's the difference for you, and how do you feel about yourself being able to do that? To say
There's,
no.
there's still a layer of guilt, but when I say no to things, there's still a layer of guilt that I'm putting on myself, or I'll hear from them. I mean, they have no problem saying like, oh, we really missed you. You wish you were here for that. They have no problem saying that to me. So I know that where that's coming from, but I'll still feel a layer of guilt for myself. However, the distance, while sometimes difficult, living very, very far, I live an hour from them. But even having that distance of, I don't see you every day, I don't talk to you every day, that's helped because I've recognized they've got their life and I've got my life. So if I can just shift my attention back to my life, if they want to talk about me, if they want to be upset with me, that's on them. They're using their energy for that. And that's their choice. So that's been freeing, being able to say, like, you're going to talk about me anyway? Go ahead. I don't have to hear it because I'm literally not there. And I love how Ayana said, I'll get back to you on that. And it gives that extra little bit of boundary to then come back and say no. So then they think you thought about it, even though in the moment you were like, no, I'm not doing that. But I'm going to make you think that I thought about it. And it lessens the blow. And it definitely takes a lot of practice to be okay with saying no to things and whatever I don't want to say consequences, results come from that. If I say no, I can't go to that event, the event's still going to happen, and there might have been a lot of fun things that I missed. I have to live with that, but I didn't have to travel, and I didn't have to worry about being in a social setting that I didn't want to be involved in, and I'm okay with that. So it's been taking a lot of practice to be okay saying no and being okay with the short amount of time of discomfort. And then I feel empowered because I said no and I did it the way I wanted to do it.
I love that. I also love how, I don't know if you realize, but when you're talking about your family, you look to the side like they're there. It's pretty funny.
Like that's where my door is. Like they're gonna burst through the door at me.
It's funny. It's really funny. What do you see the positive changes being in your life as you learn to say no more often when you feel it's just the right thing to do? And how can it be helpful and supportive of your well-being? Kathy? Unmute. We can't hear you.
I think you find a higher level of respect for yourself. And then that generates a lot of things. It generates more confidence, and it generates greater respect, and it generates better emotional well-being, and then you become a kinder person, and then your relationships are start working out, and it just kind of snowballs once you take that step to start respecting yourself.
And it snowballs in a very good way.
Yeah.
Anybody else? What are some of the benefits that you would gain from saying no sometimes when somebody wants your time and your effort? What could you do with that time?
You can actually give that time back to yourself
Mhm.
and to do something that like Kathy was saying, you're respecting yourself, you're giving yourself kindness, it's also giving yourself space to do what it is that you want to do. If there's something that somebody's asking you to do something that's going to be a commitment and you say no, well, you just got those couple of hours back to yourself to watch a movie, watch a TV show, read a book, shower, whatever it is that you need to do for yourself that you would have given that time to something else.
Mhm.
Because when you give that time to somebody else, you then have to find more time to give to yourself. And I know that I would limit that time for myself.
In general, you'd limit the time for yourself, or as a result of helping people and using time for them, that you would lose time?
I always see it as I lose time for myself because I'll fill up my week with work and projects and volunteer stuff and family, and I'll do so much for everybody else that I'm just dead exhausted, and then I don't get the chance to just sit and read or go for a walk or cook something because it's like I poorly budgeted time because I gave it all that to somebody else or something else. Well, I just left myself this much time because there's only so many hours in a day.
You know, it's really interesting, and I truly believe this about you. You talked about how you could be, when something needs to be done, you're the absolute best person for the job. I think your life would radically change, and it already has been moving in that direction. I think it would radically change if you said to yourself, I'm going to look at my schedule and try to figure out how I can be the best person for the job of making sure that there's enough time for me. And look at the schedule and see where you might have spaces where you could say, I'm doing that for 2 hours this week. I'm not going to do that this week. I'm going to read or get a massage or whatever. Call a friend. Go out for a walk. Buy a dog. I don't know. I'm just making it up. I think you could do that. I really do. Because you are very organized. I think a lot of this is about what we put our attention on, what's the expression? Where our attention goes, our energy flows. So if we put our attention on everybody else, our energy flows to them. And if we put our attention adequately enough on ourselves, then we at least have some that's dedicated to us. And we deserve it. Every single one of us, we deserve it. Now, have I mastered that myself? Definitely not. But it is one of the things I'm very interested in working on myself with my schedule, because I am super busy, super uber busy, beyond uber busy. And it's important. And so as we work on this together, I'm going to be doing some of my own work on that too, because I only have one day and I usually try to manage to get more than a day's worth of work into it. And that it's I love doing it, but I need to look at that also. I do. You know, and it's funny because a lot of people had said, oh, it's so hard living through this pandemic, but it's so nice because at least you're home, and because you're home, you'll get so much more done. No, that didn't work out that way at all. Not for me. And Ayana, you're shaking your head also.
Yeah, being home, it's like you working from home. I feel like I work more, like more hours working from home, because I don't know when to cut it off, like switch it off. Like, you're not working, it's 8 o'clock now, stop, you know? And I had to kind of make a commitment to myself to be more, for me, to spend more time, watching what I'm thinking about, watching what I'm hearing, like all this other stuff, because like what Kathy was saying, just just saying no, like it can boost your confidence. You have more time for yourself, if you don't want to do something that you don't really want to do, but you're doing it just to appease the other person. So like just recommitting my time for myself and being okay with that, and kind of feeling like, yeah, you know what, Ayana, today you are worthy of some time to yourself. You let's pour into ourselves, like I commit to you when I look in the mirror, you're worthy for a little bit of you time, whether that's, just, I don't know, reading the book for our book club, or just constantly reminding myself, like, it's okay to be where you are right now. It's okay to be you. It's okay to be alone, and have some me time, because I feel like I'm never alone, but I don't know, I might have digressed a little bit,
It's
but
fine, no
yeah,
problem.
working, it's hard. It's so much work working from home. It's like you can't escape it. Like, I have to make conscious effort to make time for myself, like good time, not just because I was binging the Ozark and I'm like, I spent hours watching that show, but then I was like in a funk last week, and I realized that I'm spending time watching something which is more of like a distraction versus uplifting myself, hearing, like listening to, like, I don't know, motivational speaker, or doing some, mindfulness meditations. Like, uplifting myself is what I really needed to do, versus just distracting myself with movies. So I can change how I'm thinking about certain things, the whole reframing your thought business. But I digress.
That's okay. It's just nice having you here. We haven't seen you in a while, and it's been lovely having you coming in and joining us. And of course, Maritza, it's been so nice having you here too.
Thank you.
Obviously. I was looking for something and I cannot find it. Let me just see. I had something lovely I had in mind to wrap us up tonight, and I just let me just see something here. No, it's not here. Oh, well, I had a great idea. It's not going to work because I don't know where it is. So I'm going to ask you, actually, maybe one of you has it. If you don't, then we won't do it. Do any of you have the Confident Women's Manifesto? Do you know where it is? I'm looking for it in my file and I can't seem to locate it. I think it's a great way to end tonight if you can find it. And Liz, if you have it on the computer, I'll let you share the screen. That would be fabulous if you can find it. And while you look, I'll look too. I can find it. Oh, I know where it is actually. Okay, just a minute. It's in Canva. I'm going to get it in 1 second. Let me just see. Okay. So this is something that I came up with. I don't know, it was either last year or the year before. I had a light color copy of it. I'm not sure what light color copy is, but I'll go with a dark one. It's okay. Okay, so I'm going to, let's just make this bigger so you guys can, whoa, that's too big. You guys can see it. And let me come back here. Okay. So this is a set of affirmations that I created for the group before we, well, about a year ago, I think. And what I'd like to do, I'd like to see if you can see it. Let me just open it up. Move it up. Wait, what happened? All right, let me just make that bigger. No, not that big. Okay. So what I'd like to do is the following. There are 10. So there are 2 for each of us. That's perfect. So I'm going to ask each of you to read 2. And let's just really take this in. This is a confident woman's pledge. These are some statements and affirmations about who you are and how you want to be in the world, how you want to show up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give you the order. Kathy, then Maritza, then Liz, then Ayana, and then me. So Kathy, you'll do 1 and 2. Maritza, you'll do 3 and 4. Liz, you'll do 5 and 6. Ayana, you'll do 7, 8, and I will do 9 and 10. Okay, Kathy, can you begin?
Sure. I'm ready and willing to get to know myself better. I am prepared to be delighted by what I find.
Maritza, can you unmute yourself for 3 and 4?
I apologize.
That's okay.
There's so much more of me than I know, and I'm open to discovering just how truly amazing I am. I will celebrate my gifts and be gentle with the parts of me that need more care and attention.
I only see number 5.
Can you see
You want me
6?
to 5 and 6? I don't see number 6.
Okay. Wait, hold on. Is that better?
I still only see, it looks like we're on your Canva account.
You are
You?
because I can't find it elsewhere.
Okay.
Is it better if it's bigger? Is that better?
I don't see a change on my screen. Everything's still the same.
We can't
Oh.
see the lower half of the page.
Oh, that's strange.
We can only see 1 through 5.
Maybe if you scroll down a little.
Does that help? Because now I only see 8, 9, and 10.
I
Oh,
think you're
yeah.
scrolling on a different page than what we see.
That's strange.
Hmm.
Okay, can you see 5?
I can see 5.
Read
I,
5.
re- I refuse to allow others to define me, for I am the only one that has the right to determine who I am.
Ayana, can you see anything on the page? Can you see 6?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to read the rest. This is an imperfect experiment. I promise to practice patience with myself as I continue on my unique path of transformation. I am exactly where I'm meant to be in this moment, and I'm determined to celebrate all of me. I will try my best to do what I can. Then I'll kick back, relax, and welcome fun into my life. I'm determined to expand my comfort zone and learn how to take up more space in the world. And the last one is I open to receive all the guidance and inspiration I need and so richly deserve on my amazing journey.
Can
And
we
with-
get a copy of that?
Absolutely, you're going to get one. You'll get one, definitely. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for showing up tonight, and thank you so much for showing up whenever you've shown up in the past. I value and appreciate each of you so much. And I am excited about getting started with you guys next week. And I am looking forward to our journey together. So be well, take care. And Ayana, if you have a second, can you hang out for a minute with me? Okay, great. Listen, have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you soon.